Alive on the Mounjaro, it's on the pen alive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Claptrack. Happy Thursday night. Welcome to the stream. I'm Dave Knapp, man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. That's why you're here. Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, that pen, Zepbound, that pen. If you're in a clinical trial, you might be on the Retatrutide pen. But whatever has you here, I'm just glad that you're here tonight. Welcome to the 36th episode of On the Pen Live. Thank you for being here. If you are new here, put an N in the chat. Let the community welcome you in here. We've got a great community over here on the Pen Live, and we would love to know that you're here. Thank you also. Right off the top, we hit 5,000 subscribers over on YouTube. That is a major milestone in the history of the Man on the Mounjaro channel. We hit 5,000. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who have raised your hand and say, I want more of this nonsense. We are having such a great time over here. I really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you for helping me hit that major, major milestone. I am just, I'm over the moon about it because this is a huge accomplishment. It just feels like, climbing a huge mountain. It feels like a real big accomplishment in the history of this channel. And we did it in under a year, which is so awesome. And it's only going to get better. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what I do at Man on the Mounjaro. We've got a great show for you tonight. We've got Dr. Dan in the house, an obesity expert, an obesity doctor from Canada, here to talk about his channel, here to talk about bring his expertise into this channel and educate us all. I am so thrilled that he was willing to be here. So thank you to Cloakster, who kind of made the connection here between Dr. Dan and I. I'm so thrilled to bring him in. We'll be bringing him in after we do our first couple of segments. So thank you to Dr. Dan for being here. We've got a great show for you tonight. How you doing? I hope that you're all doing well. Put some of your highs for the week in the chat. Let's hear what some of your highs for the week were. One of my big highs. Well, before we get into our highs for the week, let's get into rolling the bumper, right? Because this would definitely fall under our housekeeping. You want mint-for pillow? Housekeeping. So I started the 15 milligram dose last week. And as you know, every week, the biggest super chat of the night, if I can find it, I got it somewhere here. The biggest super chat of the night gets to pick the injection site. And we started the 15 milligram again last week. And so I'm super thrilled to be back on the 15 milligram. I had great appetite suppression all week. I usually do when I up a dose, so I'm hoping that it persists. But what I noticed about this 15 milligram dose is that the suppression I felt lasted almost the entire week, which is new for me. So I'm glad to be feeling that 15 milligram. Biggest super chat of the night gets to pick where this thing gets injected. So thank you for those who have inquired about how I've been doing. Headaches have been non-existent. So that is a really exciting thing for me to be experiencing the 15 milligram sans migraine. Let's see here. I missed something here in the chat. Sue the Dude gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. That's so kind of you, buddy. Thank you for doing that. I so appreciate it. Members of the backbone of this channel, and Sue, whatever the most important part of the backbone is, that's you. So thank you, buddy. Good to have you here. So the 15 milligram is 15 milligramming. And so I'm thrilled about that. No headaches so far anyway. So that is awesome. Oh, Donna, that is so kind of you. Donna with the super chat. Thank you so much. I feel like you have probably picked the injection site for the last month. So thank you. Mac Miller's high of the week is he's lost 3.6 pounds. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. You also just such an encourager of this channel. It's a very reflective night for me. Obviously hitting that 5,000 mark is just a huge deal to me. But yeah, so the 15 milligram is 15 milligramming. Thank you for those who have checked in with me this past week. We've also got some new members. So if you're a new member here this week, thank you for being a new member. Really appreciate the members. As we said, the members are the backbone of this channel. They are the ones that really as I was sharing with them, we do a members only live stream before we go live on the pen every week. And, they are the backbone of this channel. Absolutely. I could not be doing this still if it wasn't for the members of this channel. It's just that simple. The members of the channel justify the time that I put into this by giving back, and obviously things like Donna's $50 super chat, which just helps to justify the tremendous amount of time and effort that I put into this channel. So it feels very special to be rewarded in that way. So thank you for those who do that. But yeah, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be at 5,000 if it wasn't for the members. So a special shout out to the members. Thank you for being the best part of what we do here at Man on the Mounjaro. So moving on through our housekeeping, the opening, somebody had complained last week about the static, and I thought I had fixed it, but I realized I had rolled the static in the two videos together. So I'm going to get that figured out for you next week. I apologize for that. So yeah, let's talk about it today. Let's talk about what's fresh. There is a lot of fresh news in the world of GLP-1s, and we're going to keep the show rolling and get right into it. So lots of great news in the world of GLP-1s this week. And honestly, I had to whittle it down. There's a lot of really great stories going on in the world of GLP-1s. So I picked my favorite two this week, and we're going to talk about some really interesting. Well, first of all, it's a breaking news today on the Mounjaro shortage. So you saw today, if you caught my video, that the Mounjaro 10 milligram has been moved off of the shortage list, right? So that's really exciting. All the doses will be back in stock, should be available at your pharmacy within the next week or so. We know that typically takes a little bit of time to hit, right? So it's when they get the supply rectified at the manufacturer level, they still have to supply the distributors, and the distributors still have to supply the pharmacy. So it's a little bit of trickle down typically to get to your pharmacy. So just chill. They'll all be there shortly. So that was some breaking news today. So if you are on the 10 milligrams, some really good news for you in that regard, that they finally got that ironed out. And it's really good when you think about the upcoming potential weight loss indication for Mounjaro, because the FDA doesn't typically like to approve a new indication for a medication if the manufacturer cannot prove that they can keep an adequate supply for the current indication. It just makes sense, right? So this is really good news. While the drug is still listed in a technical FDA shortage, all the doses are showing as available, which is good, really good news. So if you're on the 10, put it in the chat. Let me know that you're on the 10. If you are over here for the first time on the Pen Live, I'd like to welcome you by name. So if you are here for the first time on the Pen, let me know in the chat. This show is in its 36th episode tonight. So really glad to have you all here tonight. If you're on the 10, also let me know. So what else is fresh in the world of GLP-1s? Kind of an interesting story here. So Semaglutide, it's like one of those deals where I feel like every week on this channel, we talk about something amazing that is going on with Semaglutide. And, it continues to be one of the more frustrating things, because you can't stop, like in this article, it says Novo Nordisk's unstoppable Semaglutide. So there's this kidney failure study. They were studying kidney failure in type 2 diabetic patients, right? And they were just basically trying to see if they could slow the progression of kidney failure. Real quick, we got some new folks in here. Diane is new. Charlotte is new. Pearl's mom is new. Sherry is new. So thank you for those who are new here. I appreciate you coming into the stream. But so basically, type 2 diabetics, kidney failure, checking to see if the use of semaglutide in the form of Ozempic could slow the progression of chronic kidney disease and kidney failure. So there's, Dr. Dan could probably talk much more to this topic, but essentially what it has is these trials have third-party oversight, and there's certain benchmarks that if they meet these benchmarks, they will end the trial early, right? And usually a lot of times that's negative, right? Because there's adverse side effects. People aren't tolerating the medicine. And so they go, we can't do this anymore. This is the total opposite of that. This actually hit such good numbers that they said it's very clear that the efficacy is here. Semaglutide will essentially help to slow the progression of kidney disease and improves outcomes and cardiovascular outcomes for those with type 2 diabetes and kidney failure. So, I mean, the good news continues to roll in. The bad news is you can't get it. You just can't get it. The 0.25, the 0.5, the 1 of the Wegovy, all in an indefinite shortage. So thank you to Sue the Dude and Mrs. Bell, who gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much. Thank you for adding to the family, right? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's very sweet of the two of you. So yeah, you got to kind of parlay the really great news that continues to flow out of the semaglutide trials. And you have to say, man, get your game right. Get your game right, Novo. Keep up with supply. And I think one of the cool things, and again, something else that Dr. Dan, holy smokes, Mrs. Bell, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate that. So sweet, so kind, and so generous of you. Thank you very much for that. That is so, so kind. Good to have you back as well. So you've got this other study that came out this past week that proved or that showed in a study, and I apologize that I don't have this. I'm just remembering it kind of now off the top of my head, but that basically showed Mounjaro Tirzepatide superiority to semaglutide. And so I think you can extrapolate out that a lot of the good news that's coming out about semaglutide, because semaglutide's been around for longer than obviously Tirzepatide has, that you can probably extrapolate most of that good data that comes out about semaglutide across the entire class of medications, right? Across medications like Mounjaro, and maybe even, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, the dulaglutides of the world, and even perhaps the liraglutides of the world. So very good news for the class of medications as a whole. I mean, this continues to be a life-changing and a game-changing medicines in ways that far surpass simple glucose control or assistance in weight management, right? Just so many things that are so good. You just really hope that Novo Nordisk can figure out the manufacturing woes that have continued to persist with them. So that's what we got for news, even though there's a lot more that we could cover. We'll save it for next week. There's always next week, right? So we'll talk about that. Thank you again to Mrs. Bell for the super generous super chat. Thank you so much. Want to move on to kind of keep this show rolling because we want to get Dr. Dan in here. We are going to take out the trash because it is Thursday. So we're going to always talk every Thursday night about whatever the trashy news of the week is with GLP-1s or overtly fake news. We talk about that every week. So this week is no exception. Let's get right to it. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about on this channel. And that is this issue of research chemicals, right? And we've talked about this. We pretty much beat this topic into the ground. But this week, you saw the FDA actually kind of get in on the action and sent some letters out. So we've talked about, I think it was a couple weeks ago that we talked about how even Retatrutide is popping up in these research chemicals, right? If it doesn't, and it's interesting because some of the names of the companies that were spotted in here are ads that I get constantly on my Facebook. And I got to tell you, folks, like we say every week when this topic comes up, if it doesn't require a doctor's prescription, you shouldn't touch it with the 10-foot pole. These medications are medications that it's so important to be monitored by a doctor, to have proper labs run. And that's not even to mention that you have no idea. There's no oversight about where this medication is made, what happens to it in the handling process. It's not for human consumption. So please, if you see these ads advertising fake stuff, don't be lured in by the lack of accessibility that you might be feeling right now, and don't take risks with your health. There's not much more to say than that. But the FDA basically is getting in on it and sending letters out and saying, we know what you're doing, we see what you're doing, and you need to stop. So hopefully an end is put to that so that people can be confident in the difference, right? In the difference, because there's a lot of people who get this stuff crossed up with compounds. This isn't the same thing. Compound pharmacies, sterile compound pharmacies, are governed by their state board of pharmacies in the states that they operate. There is oversight, and those require a doctor's prescription. This is totally different. Know the difference. Run away from those Facebook ads. I can't even believe that there are creators who lose their accounts just talking about having conversations with doctors about different ways to access medication. But then you look at these advertisements that are running on Google Shopping. I mean, some of these companies that were called by name, I've seen ads for through a Google search. I've seen them on Facebook. I've seen them on Instagram, and somehow that just continues to persist, and that doesn't get shut down. It just blows my mind. But that's all I'm going to say about that, because we have such an exciting show tonight. We have such an exciting guest. Our next segment of the show, we always talk about every week. We bring a special guest in and we talk about the hot channel of the week. This week is no exception. In fact, this is one of the hottest channels that we've had on the show in the history of the show. So we're going to roll the bumper. Hot channel. This week's hot channel is none other than YouTube's own Dr. Dan. So we're going to bring him in. Dr. Dan, how are you, buddy?
What's going on? I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
So good. It's nice to meet you. I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to chat. I know I've had a number of my peeps have reached out and said, I need to come and talk to you. So here we are. We finally set it up.
I'm so glad, and hopefully it won't be the last time. I'm excited for this conversation because there's really pertinent news for those who are our Canadian friends who follow the channel. So we'll get into that. But I am curious, Dr. Dan, to know how it was that you got involved in content creation in YouTube. You got a nice, thriving channel. What brought you over here in the first place, and how has it kind of grown?
I mean, for me, it was really like, I guess my content creation kind of like blew up on TikTok, and I did really well over there. I had like 100K plus followers and stuff. And YouTube, I mean, I liked it because I enjoyed talking and whatever like that and doing a little bit more details. And so, yeah, had a real opportunity to kind of do both for a little bit, but was more focused on the TikTok side. And then, YouTube kind of blew up, TikTok kind of blew up. And then unfortunately, TikTok seemed to not really like us talking about the GLP-1 medications and the other weight loss things because of weight loss and all that wonderful stuff, and kind of some other political things that I think were going on in that avenue. And so my account actually got banned. And yeah, I've just decided to sink all my time and effort into YouTube and making more of the long form content and doing a little bit more of this kind of interaction with people. And yeah, it's kind of just been growing from there of just putting out good quality information and helping the peeps out, you know?
Absolutely. When was it that you lost access to your TikTok?
That would have been, I think that was like May or June this year, I think.
Okay, yeah, it was so May. Kind of like right before there was like a mass exodus of a lot of accounts. Now, a lot of those people got their accounts back. Did you ever try that, or you just kind of like you one and done, like I'm not going to play this game type of thing?
No, I definitely tried to get it back and, sent the emails and whatever, but yeah, they never accepted my appeal, and then they wouldn't let me do a second appeal. So I was just like, yeah, we're done. I still have a TikTok account, but really it's just kind of regurgitating shorts and stuff that I'll put on here. Like I'm not really that active on it at present. I don't even think I have it on my phone anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, that's super frustrating. And but I have a lot of friends since I just started TikTok. I started TikTok around the time you left TikTok. So I kind of begrudgingly went over there, started on YouTube, and then just like gradually got pulled over there by different viewers. It's like, you need to be there, you need to be there, you need to be there. And so now I'm kind of double dipping, but I definitely love the longer form content. I love this. The lives that you can do on TikTok just don't have the same community vibe that they do here. There's definitely a community piece to it there, but I always liken it to kind of like the difference of going to like a really big church or a really little church. Like go to a big church and it's flashy and it's a lot going on and it's entertaining. So you go to the little church and that's where you go and like everybody knows when like somebody's aunt is sick, or somebody's dog died, like that's what it is like over here. And that's for me. So I love it. We've got a great community over here. So when did you start your YouTube channel?
I mean, I've been kind of off and on with YouTube for a few years now, but I would say it really took off in, I think it was 2021. Yeah, I kind of started picking up where I started being more consistent with it. And then I've had a couple of breaks here and there. And then since January of this year, it's been super consistent and kind of just really growing and building it out. But I would say it probably took off. One of my first viral videos was on Ozempic, and yeah, it blew up, and I kind of went from a couple hundred to a few thousand, and then suddenly it's been steadily going up from there. So
you've kind of ridden the GLP-1 wave, kind of too, which is exactly obviously what I've done is all about GLP-1s. How'd you end up getting into obesity medicine specifically?
Oh, that's a long story, but the short of it is I struggled with my weight myself growing up, and actually I got jumped at a party when I was about 16 years old and had my jaw broken, jaw wired shut, and I lost 40 pounds. I don't recommend it as a weight loss method by any means, but lost a whole bunch of weight. And then, yeah, kind of struggled on the other side of losing all that weight, suddenly getting a whole bunch of attention from the opposite sex. And then kind of went through 19, 20, got very obsessed with the gym and trying to get as big as possible, and became very obsessive with diet and weight loss and et cetera, et cetera. And then went to school for 10 years, didn't really know what I wanted to do as an adult, and became a pharmacist, and then went back, got my doctor of pharmacy, and kept getting more education and stuff. And yeah, it was actually Novo Nordisk, the company that makes Wegovy and Ozempic. They approached me and they're like, hey, this obesity space, like here's these cool things that we're doing. And in Canada, we didn't really have any treatments at the time. So it was very much we were just using kind of the psychological stuff, behavioral stuff, and really dived into that. And I fell in love with that. And then we had the medications that kind of came out there shortly thereafterwards with Saxenda. And I was already hooked. I'm like, this is exactly it. I know the struggle. I know when people talk about the food noise, the conversations they have, the shaming themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was a really beautiful melding of the pharmaceutical healthcare provider piece of it, and then building out the other side and looking and developing into this aspect. And then turns out I like creating content and kind of creating the community and helping people out and trying to support as many people as I can. And yeah, here we are.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you lending some of your expertise to our stream tonight. And I'm really curious, and I know a lot of people are curious in the chat to hear a little bit more about the big news for Mounjaro this past couple of weeks that's kind of come online. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Mounjaro launch in Canada?
Yeah, so it looks like what I've been told is the last week in October, my pharmacy that I own up here in Calgary will be able to order it, as well as every other pharmacy across Canada. And then the first week in November, it should be hitting the pharmacy shelves, so it will be available. Obviously, like you were saying, we don't have the indication on Mounjaro yet for the obesity management. So it's going to be for diabetes management at present. And that's kind of what the drug companies are putting it out for right now. But nonetheless, it is coming to market. It will be on the shelves. I've been very much told by my reps and have kind of made them basically swear on their, firstborn child that they will not have a shortage on me, because I will be very cranky about that.
Right.
And so it's coming out. I think the couple of big things that people probably need to know about is that, Ozempic, they have kind of the pens, and I think you guys also have they're like the Trulicity pens, single dose pens or whatever. Up here in Canada, at least initially, what we're getting is, those guys right there. What we're getting for Mounjaro is we're actually getting just single dose vials, because what they're having a problem with is the preservative and the devices themselves. And so they're going to be single dose vials. So, you start at 2.5 milligrams, you'll get your 4 vials in a box, and you're going to have to draw it up old school with like an old insulin needle, draw it up, inject it, and there's your dose kind of thing. So a little bit more complexity and that sort of thing, and probably going to need a lot of education and just understanding of how to do it. Obviously, that's definitely something I'll be putting out on my channel, is the ins and the outs of how you do the dosing and injections and stuff, so that you can do it as effectively and safely as possible. But that's kind of one of the big things on that side. Eventually, they're going to be coming out with the actual pen and device itself. I've been told on that side that they're actually looking at more of a multi-dose pen, like the Ozempic pen here, versus just a single dose, so that we can have the flexibility of like, you know what, 2.5 and 2.5 isn't enough, 5 is too much, let's go somewhere in between, and kind of using the clicks and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm actually very pumped about that, because
Yeah.
that's what I love about the Ozempic pen and the one downside of Wegovy and such. So I think that's the other thing, but when that happens, nobody knows. They're just bringing it to market and trying to get it out as quickly as possible. And I mean, there's definitely the business side, like Novo Nordisk has kind of dropped the ball in some senses,
Right.
and keeping up with supply. So they're going to swoop in and steal a large market share, I think, here. So
Yeah,
that's definitely the big news.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated by what's kind of gone on with Novo Nordisk, just because like, it's just, as a marketer and a sales guy, I think that's where like it just like grates against my every fiber of my being. Like, you, every week on this show, we talk about some landmark study that's come out about how semaglutide is changing the game. Now, we talked a little bit about how that probably extrapolates over to Mounjaro as well. It's good for the entire class of medication when this news comes out, but you know, it is a semaglutide study. So when you talk about doctors prescribing this stuff, it's a huge opportunity for Novo Nordisk. So for them to be missing that because there's these things going on with the suppliers, there's these things going on with their factories. It's like, oh, what a golden opportunity. But obviously, you know, Lilly will swoop in and capitalize, and they had the single dose vial presentation and the multi-click pen presentation already in the works. So they were thinking ahead and really learning, I think, from a lot of the areas that Novo Nordisk has stubbed their toe. And so thankfully, you know, you're getting it there. And I think, you know, with Mounjaro coming on, maybe you agree with this and maybe not, but with the Mounjaro indication coming on in Canada for, you know, diabetes, which is, you know, I don't know if it's different there, if it's harder to prescribe with the way your healthcare system is set up, if it's harder to prescribe things off label. But I think that a lot of diabetics are already used to insulin syringes, you know,
Right.
maybe more so the pens. I think I maybe froze up here. I don't know if you can still hear me or not, but the vials launching there, I think, is a really all right thing for them.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like it won't be the end of the world by any means. It'll certainly be, I think, it'll be an opportunity to kind of help and support people out. And if anything, I'm kind of looking forward to it, because it does allow me to kind of interact and have more opportunity with, you know, my patients and stuff that are going on the medication, and certainly helping them to be, you know, making sure that they're kind of on track. We're still focusing on all of the lifestyle changes and behaviors. We're not just putting people on the drug. We're actually, looking at what their nutrition intake is and making sure they're not becoming malnourished, and properly managing the side effects. I would say that's one of the biggest things that I see, is that a lot of people get on these drugs and then they're just not getting the support in managing side effects, or they're told to start at the max dose and then they have a world of problems and stuff like that. And it's, definitely going to cause some issues and problems for sure. So, very excited for it to kind of come down the pipe. And I don't think it'll really be that much of an issue. But if anybody has any problems with getting the proper education and stuff like that, like I said, I'll have some educational stuff on my channel and whatnot. But making sure you connect with your healthcare providers to make sure you're on the right track and not having any problems.
Absolutely. So, thanks for hanging with me there. This has happened. This is the third week in a row it's happened. I got to figure out why my computer's, it's a brand new computer, and I never had this problem with my 10-year-old Mac before this. But the question that I'm sure everybody is going to want to know is, like, there's a lot of accessibility issues with these medications in the United States. And so a lot of people have looked to Canadian pharmacies in the United States to fill their medications. Like, can you speak to that a little bit? Like I would love the single dose vials for the dosing thing, if nothing else, like being able to control the dose. Is that something that you think will be available? I know that it sounded like maybe they were kind of putting that on lockdown with Ozempic for a little bit. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So with regards to the Canadian pharmacies and stuff, yeah, there was the one clinician that was like based in Texas, and I think he had like a PEI or Nova Scotia physician's license, and so he was writing prescriptions via his Canadian license, sending it to a Canadian pharmacy, and then the Canadian pharmacy would then fill it and ship it down to the States. They have definitely put a hard lockdown on that, and they are cracking down on it further and further. And rightfully so. I mean, yes, it is cheaper medications up here and such like that, but we only are allocated so much medication to our pharmacy or our pharmacies and our drug supply and stuff. And so if that's now being taken and used by US residents and such, well, then the drug company is then going to affect our supply, jack up our prices up here and stuff like that. And really, this is overarching a much bigger issue in terms of government and politics and the US's lack of regulation and oversight on the pharmaceutical industry. Like in Canada, we have like a specific pricing policy that these companies need to match and that sort of thing. And even then, sometimes they compare the prices that a company wants to sell it at and they look at like what the state sells it at. But now there's talk that even on the federal level, they're going to say, no, we're not even going to look at the states anymore because you guys are so out to lunch in terms of drug prices and stuff that it does not make any kind of sense for us to even compare because we're not going to make our people pay that amount for that medication. So,
right.
Yeah, right now I know it's very much on lockdown. I don't know of anybody that's doing it. If it is, it's very kind of backdoor, maybe a couple of places. But honestly, it's one of those things where I wouldn't necessarily get too tied to it by any means because it's probably going to get shut down. And if you get too reliant on that supply, well, then you're kind of up, Schitt's Creek all of a sudden and not able to access it. And then you have to come off.
Right. Well, it's really exciting for our Canadian friends. I know that like they've probably been really waiting for Mounjaro to hit up there. I mean, you've been waiting for Wegovy for what? I mean, it's been approved there, but not available, right?
Oh yeah. Like Wegovy, there hasn't even been an indication that it's coming to market yet. Like all the reps that I talk to that sell on like Saxenda and stuff from Novo, yeah, they don't even talk about Wegovy because they have no idea when we're supposed to get it. And I don't even think, I think you guys are still having a massive shortage down there on it. So until you guys even meet your demand down there, we're not going to see it. I suspect like 2025, maybe. So,
I mean, and what baffles me is you see them opening in like the German market. Like how? If you can't serve the markets that you're currently in, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's baffling. Well, congratulations to our Canadian friends for getting access to Mounjaro. Obviously not the weight loss medication, but I think that'll be coming, and I don't know what the lag will be when the FDA indication comes for Tirzepatide for chronic weight management. Does that have any bearing on how you're able to prescribe it in Canada or not really?
Well, no, like a medication, if a medication has the evidence for weight management like Mounjaro has, it's same thing with like Ozempic. Technically, Ozempic only has the approval for diabetes up here. So it's off-label prescribing when I prescribe it up here. And so it's the off-label piece is not a problem as long as it's evidence-based that you're prescribing it for. So Mounjaro, we have the evidence on the weight management side. So it technically can be prescribed off-label for weight management here as well. But there is it more or less comes down to the insurance companies and what they'll cover. And they're very specific on the indication. Like it has to be diabetes. They will not cover it for weight management unless, like I know with Ozempic, I've had some luck with some drug insurances where they just automatically cover it without any kind of special authorizations or anything like that. So unless you've got a special situation like that, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to pay out of pocket for it.
Yeah. So it hasn't necessarily been the worst thing in the world that you haven't gotten Ozempic or gotten Wegovy up there because you've had Ozempic, but obviously just in lower dose.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I have some patients that are doing like say 2 1 milligram shots or, a couple of 0.5 milligram shots, depending on what they need.
Sure.
Not many people, we generally bring them up to 2, maybe up to 2.5, but then suddenly they're doing 3 shots at once. And unless you want to be like a human pincushion, maybe it's not the most ideal. So it's kind of finding the balance in the interim. And and then just seeing when Mounjaro comes. And I think, well, Eli Lilly, they've got the other one in the pipeline there that's, I think, going to then blow everybody else out of the water as the next big one. So very much so, it's kind of all these things that are just building up. And it's super exciting.
It is a very exciting time in obesity medicine. Very encouraging things going on, which is really a nice segue to, I think, the other part of the conversation that I wanted to have with you, because if you don't follow Dr. Dan's content, Dr. Dan gets it. I know that you said that you had your own struggles with weight, and perhaps that is part of the reason that you have the perspective that you do. And maybe it's just experience of dealing with lots of people who have, struggled with obesity. But I love what you had to say on it. So make sure that you follow Dr. Dan. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about specifically, and this is a really interesting topic that I think the community is going to be really interested in hearing tonight. So one of the things that I overheard in one of the videos that you did, and it's really stuck with me. So a lot of the people tend to think when they get on a GLP-1 that more equals better, right? And so one of the things that we've talked about on this channel with, ironically, the last doctor I had on the show was Dr. Dan as well, Dr. Daniel Rosen.
Right.
But we talked about climbing the ladder slowly, which is really hard when the doses are in shortage, right? But climbing the ladder slowly and then milking each dose for as much as that dose has to offer. But can you give your perspective on why, with a GLP-1 medication, or in Mounjaro's case, GLP-1 and GIP, why more does not necessarily equal better? And this is the time to listen up, because this is really fascinating information for the community.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Mounjaro is actually like a really, really good example of this. So I'm trying to remember which study it was. I think it was like the Surmount-1 trial. But anyways, regardless. So when we look at the data that kind of comes from those trials, when you go from Mounjaro 5 milligrams once a week, and then you go to Mounjaro 10 and 15, and you look at the 68-week period that they do this trial over, and we look at the amount of weight that's lost, you can just see from the data itself that with 5 milligrams, you get pretty much a majority of the weight loss that you're going to see. And then as we go to 10 and 15, suddenly between especially 10 and 15, like the extra amount of weight loss you get between those dosages, really you're starting to get less and less bang for your buck, if you will. So you get most of what you're going to see from that 5 milligram dose. You might get a little bit more with the 10 milligram, but going from 10 to 15, you're getting almost nothing extra or additional, maybe like an extra kilo or something like that. But overall, you're really not squeezing that much more out of it. And mechanistically, when you kind of start looking at the kinetics and how the body works and that sort of thing, largely what's happening is your body only has so many receptors. It only has so many sites that these medications can bind to. And so, yeah, you can pump more in, but if you're like keyhole of your receptor, the drug's trying to bind to it, but you have all of these other drugs that are sitting around it, well, suddenly that one key and receptor are being bound up. All the other drug is just kind of sitting there and hanging out receptor and not getting a chance to have an actual effect at that point in time. And so essentially, yeah, you're just pumping in a whole bunch of very expensive medication that's not actually doing anything, not actually providing any additional benefit. And so that's actually why we're looking at the other molecules and medications that are coming out. And we have, they have dual mechanisms like an amylin receptor and a GLP-1, is because, well, now we're not just only hitting the GLP-1 receptors, now we're also hitting an amylin receptor as well. And so it's going to provide a synergistic effect, because one receptor is not just being completely saturated. We're kind of getting both receptors. They're both having separate mechanisms of action and ultimately leading to a greater amount of weight loss. Whereas when we pump in more and more of just a single molecule like Ozempic, or I think Wegovy, the trial right now they've got going on is like 7.5 milligrams once a week. Like, how much more are we actually going to get out of that? And also, we're probably just going to get a whole pile of side effects. So, I mean, TBD on that study and such, but yeah, we're kind of getting a limited amount of return. And really, as with anything, more doesn't actually mean better or anything like that. So it's the complex interplay of that, of what the body can actually handle. And really the cool thing about these medications, and in particular with Mounjaro, is that 5 milligrams, you don't necessarily need to go up any higher. Like you can stay at the 5 milligrams and you're going to get a heck of a lot of benefit if you maybe.
Do you think that that is different for somebody who is diabetic versus non-diabetic? I mean, obviously you have Surmount and Surpass. Is there any real data there that kind of shows?
Yeah, I mean, you see the same pattern when you look at the A1C levels. Like at 5 milligrams, you pretty much get 2% A1C lowering. Actually, at 5 milligrams of Mounjaro, it's more effective than for sure Ozempic 1 milligram. And even then, when you go up to 10 and 15, I think you get 2% or like 2.1% A1C lowering with 10, and then it goes up to like 2.3% A1C lowering with 15 milligrams. So even on those dosages, you're getting a very limited bang for your buck as you go higher and higher. And so it's kind of the question of, well, do we need to go higher? Some people, yes. Some people are going to maybe have more receptors or not be as sensitive, and so we need to push more drug into them. But a lot of people, that lower dose is going to be perfectly fine, and they're not going to get much extra out of that dose as they go up on a higher and higher level.
I'm kind of putting you on the spot with a question that might not even make sense, but in my brain it does, so I'll ask it. So for somebody like me who really, responds better to the 15 than anything else, and it's very noticeable, just from the way that I feel, right? So is it possible that people with different, levels of obesity, different chemistry, that other people, for whatever reason, because of the severity of their disease, has more receptors? Or, I mean, does that even make sense?
Totally. So, I mean, what we're kind of getting into is just like, there's a whole complexity of just obesity as a disease itself and just the differences in physiology. So to kind of give you an example, some people have leptin resistance, right? Because what we know with that, individuals that have higher amounts of adiposity, they have a lot more leptin, and leptin is our hormone that basically is going to regulate and tell us to stop eating, you're satisfied, and that sort of thing. And so some individuals that have a lot of extra fat tissue, they're producing all of this leptin, but that hormone is just not getting through, whether it can't cross the blood-brain barrier, whether their receptor is just not as recepting, I guess you could say, or maybe their leptin molecule is just a little bit funky or something, and it just doesn't allow it to ultimately have its effect. There's a whole pile of theories and other physiology, but yeah, some individuals are going to have a defect in that pathway. Some individuals, and I think the people that really respond well to the GLP-1 medications, they likely have some kind of deficit or deficiency in their GLP-1 satiety pathways. And so GLP-1s for them work like a hot damn kind of thing, right? So it's all going to depend on your own personal physiology, which is going to be determined by your genetics and determined by your environment that you grew up in and your learned behaviors as to which drug is going to be the most effective for you and how much of that drug you're ultimately going to need. What I can tell you as well is that males tend to need higher doses. Males tend to have fewer side effects for the most part. As well, what I find sometimes is that individuals that had quite a bit of fat on them and they lose quite a bit, we actually need to start decreasing their dose of their medication because suddenly they start getting side effects because there's just less space that the drug is going to. And so it's more concentrated suddenly in the system and can cause some issues and problems in that regard. So absolutely, there's going to be various differences. And yeah, for some people, the GLP-1s, they don't seem to really do anything whatsoever. And so until we get other medications out, those might work like a hot damn for them because they had a deficiency in some other pathway that the GLP-1 wasn't able to correct.
That's very interesting. So I think that it's interesting that you mentioned that because I had just shared like last week some of the news that had come out on Retatrutide that I think, shorter study than the Surmount studies, the initial ones that were like 72 weeks long or something like that. The Retatrutide trials were like 48 weeks and people lost more weight. So people lost 24% of their body weight at the upper end, but if you were a woman, you lost 28%. And I thought that was really interesting information. Just, that women were, for whatever reason, losing more weight on at least Retatrutide.
Totally. And so that's going to even come down to just a physiological difference between men and women and that sort of thing. And I don't think we actually know the exact reason for it per se. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting finding. And I think that's going to be more and more what we're going to see. I'd also be kind of curious with the male aspect of things, if that, males in general, they're heavier, yes, and there's a larger number on the scale, but in terms of body composition of that muscle to fat aspect of things, maybe they're kind of losing less weight, but ultimately retaining more muscle or something like that. Like there's a lot of different things that are kind of up and coming. And yeah, I would say, I mean, that's kind of one of the cool things about this space, cool and scary, in that there's a whole bunch that we don't know, but there's a lot of really interesting things that we're starting to learn about the human body and appetite regulation and how some of this stuff works that we had no idea about previously.
So I'm sorry, because like you're saying so much that's spawning like 40,000 questions in my head. I'm not used to talking to people that are so well versed in this, and it just creates a lot of questions. So when you talk about some of the medicines that are in the trials that are like, GLP-1 and amylin, can you tell me a little bit about amylin and even leptin and ghrelin? Can you talk to us about what those are and why those might be effective to target?
Okay, so I mean, to kind of give you without getting into too much detail, it's a whole bunch of physiology that even I have struggled to memorize at this point, but essentially when it comes to our satiety and hunger hormones, we have a whole, I think 50, 60, even 100 different hormones that are involved in telling us that we are full. Like there's all these various different pathways. GLP-1, GIP plays a role, leptin plays a role. Like there's all these various
Are
different
these all
hormones.
under the incretin umbrella or not?
No, so these wouldn't all be under the incretin umbrella. GIP and GLP-1 will be. Amylin's a little bit different in terms of its mechanism of action and where it's going. But when we look at our hunger hormones, we have basically just one single hormone, and that's ghrelin. And the way to remember ghrelin is that, the way I was told, is that if your stomach is growling, so ghrelin is the way that you can know ghrelin is being released from your stomach. It's ultimately going up to your brain, and it's stimulating your brain and saying, hey, you need to find some food, we need some nutrients and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of, it's very interesting because we can't just go in and just knock out ghrelin, because if we knock that out, then that's going to cause some other issues, because having hunger and a drive to go and find food, well, that's important for your survival, right? You still need to eat and making sure you're nourishing your body and that sort of thing. So we have to also be mindful of those pieces, and it makes it challenging because you would think, oh, we just have this one hormone, we should be able to just wipe it out and no big deal. But not quite the way it's going to work, and find a nice balance in terms of you still living as a human being and doing your day-to-day things, and also helping you to manage your weight. Whereas on the satiety side of things, with all of these different hormones and pieces that are there, there's just so many interesting and different targets to hit. And we've certainly done a lot of research with some of them, and even leptin, there's been some initial trials. I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe late 1990s, where actually we were injecting people with leptin, and what we found, or maybe it wasn't, I think, yeah, it just wasn't providing any benefit. So it was all of a sudden okay, well, what's happening? We're providing this hormone that we know helps with satiety. So what's the deal? And that's kind of where we started getting some of the stuff around leptin resistance. And so is it not crossing the blood-brain barrier? Is there something else? And then there's even differences if, say, you've lost a whole bunch of weight and then you've gained a whole bunch of weight back rapidly. We then start looking at things where your fat cells start dividing and start getting some issues in that regard of things. So now we have differences in the concentration of leptin levels. And yeah, I mean, I can go on and on and on and on, but there's so much complex overlap and interplay there that it's, yeah. And I mean, there's the targets and stuff that we can look at and are going to be building out, and things that are in the pipeline is insane.
I think it sounds like there's a lot that we don't know, which I think is really interesting, because I'm just I'm just a lay person that is trying to learn about this stuff because I'm somebody who struggled with diabetes and obesity. And I think because I was reading something that even with the GIP, there's a drug that's kind of like Mounjaro in that it's a GLP-1 and it's a GIP, but it blocks the GIP instead of antagonizing or whatever the word is. Instead of encouraging the production of GIP, it blocks it. And it's, equally as effective. And it's like, what is that about? Like, how does that?
Well, and even like, if we look at just GIP itself, like if you were to just inject yourself with just GIP, essentially it provides absolutely no benefit. It literally needs the GLP-1 component that then they seem to work synergistically in helping each other out. And even some of the things that GIP does work counter to what the GLP-1 does, but on the grand scheme and mechanism of it all, they seem to synergistically still come together and ultimately help you to lose and manage weight and stuff like that. And so, yeah, the kind of the antagonism and like depending even like when it's binding to the GIP receptor and that sort of thing, like we're starting to see differences in that and how it can have in one state a, satiety effect, and maybe in another state, it helps with you feeding and getting more food into you. And so, yeah, it really, this is, again, a great example of just the complexities of it. And also, I always kind of go back to the low carb idea and how people will say that it's insulin that's the bad, horrible thing. But this just shows that there's so much complex interplay that it's not just insulin being higher and the fact that you ate carbohydrates that you got fat. There is like all of these other aspects and things that are playing, and insulin will play a role in building muscle, which is super important. Yes, it can store fat. And so it's, yeah, you're kind of just we're exhausting my brain right now just thinking about it, to be honest.
So I have to apologize because this is about as much of a self-indulgent live stream as I've ever done, because I just have so many questions, and it's like dealing with the friggin' obesity dictionary on the other side. So thank you for indulging me in this conversation, because it's just fascinating to me, and it's just exciting. Like, even with the GIP, like it seems like what they're learning is that more than anything, it helps to mitigate side effects that you experience with some of the older GLP-1 receptor agonists, is that you add that GIP component and all of a sudden it mellows out some of the GI stuff that people deal with semaglutide. And as you talked about, like as they're upping the doses of semaglutide, it's like, when do you max that out based upon your receptors, and what's the trade-off for side effects? It seems like it really worked for Rybelsus, because moving from 14 milligrams to 50 milligrams made a huge difference in weight loss. But that, probably is more about like the bioavailability of 14 milligrams of oral semaglutide versus the injectable. I don't know. There's just I think I could probably just like pick your brain for like 4 days. So I'm going to use a little self-control and not ask you any more questions, because I literally could sit here all night and ask you. I hope you'll come do this again, because this has been fascinating. And I can't wait as a creator, it's very hard for me to like absorb other content, because you're so focused. Like, we all have day jobs, things that we're responsible for. So consuming content, there's not a lot of time if you're creating it as well. But I'm going to binge watch your videos. I'm sure that many in the chat will do the same. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that maybe you wanted to talk about tonight, or anything you wanted to say before we kind of sign off tonight?
No, I mean, I kind of, some of the things that you were saying about the compounded and like some of those fake ones and stuff like that, just wanted to kind of reiterate on that, because yeah, it's a very scary landscape that's currently out there. And, some of the things we've even talked about tonight is prioritizing health. Like, yes, weight loss is one thing and losing weight can improve your health, but losing weight is not the end all be all. And so if you're going to such levels where you're now injecting or getting your hands on mystery medication from Southeast Asia somewhere that you have no idea what's actually in it, is that actually worth it on the grand scheme of it? Yeah, it's kind of a conversation that I have with a lot of people every single day. And it's the way our society has got us all messed up in that it's weight is so much of our intrinsic value, when in reality, you being healthy and being present for your loved ones and the people in your life and stuff and doing the things you want to do, that's what actually fucking matters, for pardon my French, if you will. So keeping that in mind, like if you're looking at yourself and you're going to these extremes, yeah, you're just looking at the next kind of fad thing. So making sure you're taking care of yourself, your health is the most important priority. And yeah, weight is not the end all be all.
Yeah. And that, like your little spiel there at the end is the perfect encapsulation of why your content is so friggin' awesome. Because you get it. Like no change that you're making while you're on a GLP-1, if it's a change that you can't live with the rest of your life, is not worth it. If it's something that deprives you in some other area that you can't fathom living with the rest of your life, it's not worth doing now. Right now is the time to use the GLP-1 as a tool to make the changes that you can commit to and you can be comfortable with in a 360-degree view of your whole life, and that you can live with and be happy with and content with. And that's why your content, well, that's one reason why your content is so awesome. The other reason is just the wealth of knowledge that you have. And thank you so much for giving some of it to our community tonight. Really appreciate you coming on. Hope you'll do it again.
Totally.
Because this is just I'm nerding out pretty hardcore tonight. Thank you for sharing your knowledge tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure, man. I love coming on here and spreading the knowledge and trying to help people out. So yeah, happy to come on anytime. If you got questions and what have you, let me know.
Absolutely. And you can follow him if you're not already. I'm sure you are, but if you're not, at the official Dr. Dan on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, probably other places as well, but definitely YouTube is his focus. So make sure that if you are in the chat right now and you do not follow Dr. Dan, your number one job right now is to pause this, because you can come back and rewind it, go over and follow Dr. Dan's channel. Dr. Dan, thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate you, bud.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you later.
Man. So for the 5,000 follower spectacular, I could think of nothing better than to just indulge myself with somebody on the other side of this thing that knows that much about all the things. That was fun. I'm pretty sure I could talk to that guy for a straight week and not run out of questions for him. So awesome. Dr. Dan and Dave should be a series. I agree. That was really, really, I hope you enjoyed it, because I, with the F-bomb included, I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much, Dr. Dan, for coming on. So I think by my count, I owe by 1 penny. I think I owe Mrs. Bell to choose the injection site tonight. So, and I really like, Sue, that is the comment of the century. Yeah. So Mrs. Bell, you get to choose where I inject this 15 milligrammer tonight. I can't get a room, Dave. Yeah. I mean, wow. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed myself. Yeah. Me too, Mac. I look forward to binging his channel as well. It's very kind of him to come on the channel and like indulge all the questions that I had. I had a few that I had listed to him, like what's going on with Mounjaro in Canada. You know, people are going to want to know if they can get it in Canada, but then, man, I was just like, I couldn't help myself. So you got to let me know, Mrs. Bell, where this is going tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This was a fun one, wasn't it? I mean, I had fun. I think like for tonight, I'm going to take that as a win. Let's do the left arm. So I am a left-handed dude. I don't know if y'all know that about me, but I'm a left-handed dude. So we're going to put it in the left arm. He's all flushed. I'm verklempt. Thank you so much for the super chats tonight. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being here on the 5,000th subscriber to this YouTube channel. I mean, we started this how long ago? Almost a year. It'll be a year. Mercy. Almost a year ago. In November, I never would have guessed 5,000 of you. Creamy's a lefty. That does not surprise me at all. There's just a kinship between lefties. I bet Dr. Dan's a lefty too. I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. Thank you for those who subscribed and helped us to get to 5,000. Natalie's never done the left arm. I highly recommend it. So this was a fun one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the stream and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch the stream because it's kind of hard to pay as much attention as I want to. And there was a lot of good stuff in here. I'm excited to go back through the clinical trials and look at which medications are being stacked, GLP-1 plus like leptin, ghrelin, amylin. I know they're out there. I've read about them. It's just I didn't know what they were and how they worked. Ghrelin, now I know. So awesome. Is that a tourniquet tattoo? No, that's an ichthus. That's an ichthus. So thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you. You're the best part of this channel. Thank you for helping me get to 5,000 subscribers. Just an unbelievable milestone to reach here tonight. I can't think of spending it with anybody else but you all. Thank you, especially to the members. Thank you to Donna, and thank you to Mrs. Bell for the huge super chats tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you also to Sue the Dude, who is the mod to end all mods and the gifts of the memberships. If you are a beneficiary of that, make sure you let Sue the Dude and I think Mrs. Bell know that you're thankful for them. Y'all make this thing go round. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to catch you on the next one. Until next one, the next one, have a great week losing weight. What is it? One of you always says, have a good week, losers. And that's what we're trying, right? We're all trying to lose. So we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for being here, y'all.